Imagine getting lost in a deadly snowstorm, the kind that takes lives in hours, not days. You're freezing, starving, and the only thing standing between you and death is hope. Now imagine you're not alone. Your loyal German shepherd is with you, searching through the storm, trying to save you when even you have given up. And then, through the white blur of snow, a cabin appears. No footprints, no smoke, no sign of life, just a door unlocked. Inside, food, water, firewood, and a single handwritten note from a stranger that says, "If you are in danger, use this place. I hope you survive." But here's the part no one expects. That cabin didn't save just one life, it saved many. Each person who survived added something: a blanket, medicine, food, a message, turning a forgotten cabin into a chain of silent miracles. No names, no rewards, just kindness passed from one soul to the next. And today, I'm going to tell you the full story, how a Marine veteran and his dog accidentally helped create a legacy that still saves people to this day. If stories like this remind you that goodness still exists, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and thank you for being here. The northern Montana wilderness had a way of swallowing sound, especially in winter. When the snow came down so thick, it blurred the horizon into a single sheet of white. The storm had rolled in faster than any forecast predicted, cutting off the trails, silencing the forest, turning familiar pine-covered ridges into a maze of icy wind and blinding snowfall. Temperatures had dropped below -15 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of cold that burned before it froze, the kind that punished hesitation. Jack Miller knew that kind of cold well. At 48 years old, he carried the hard-earned instincts of a former U.S. Marine: tactical mind, controlled breathing, always scanning, always calculating. But even a soldier was still human against a storm like this. He trudged forward, boots sinking deep into powder, every step heavier than the last. Thick ice clung to his beard where his breath had crystallized. His face, weathered and square-jawed, showed no panic. Only the grim resolve of a man who had faced worse in war but knew that nature had no mercy to negotiate with. The wind cut through his military-grade parka, numbing the skin beneath. He checked the straps of his backpack, lighter than it had been yesterday. Only one protein bar and half a bottle of water remained. They had lost more than food. They had lost direction. Beside him moved Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a black and tan coat, now dusted in white. Rex wasn't just a pet. He was once a trained military working dog: high intelligence, disciplined obedience, powerful frame with sharp, alert eyes. Even exhausted, Rex scanned the environment like a soldier on patrol, ears perked, nose low to the ground. His paws lifted and sank in the snow rhythmically, though his slowed breathing revealed his fatigue. The cold gnawed at both of them, but dogs like Rex were built for endurance. And he stayed close, always a step ahead, as if he sensed Jack needed him not just for survival, but for direction, physical and emotional. Jack spoke in a low voice, not because Rex needed the command, but because talking kept him awake. "Easy, boy. We're not dying out here. Not today." His voice was deep, slightly rough, with the tone of someone who had spent years giving orders even when no one was left to follow them. Wind answered him instead of Rex. The storm roared like a living thing. They had been hiking back toward the trailhead before the storm hit, 3 days into what was supposed to be a quiet, reflective winter trip. But silence had turned to white chaos, and the map meant nothing against the fury of the wind. Jack felt the warning signs: numb fingertips, stiff jaw, sluggish thought. The early stages of hypothermia. He forced himself to stay focused. Movement meant warmth. Stopping meant death. Rex suddenly paused, nose lifted, body tense. Jack watched him. Years of training together meant he trusted Rex's instincts more than a compass. "You smell something?" Rex stepped forward, tail stiff, following a scent line invisible to human eyes. Jack followed without question. Minutes stretched like hours until a dark shape broke through the wall of snow, a structure half hidden by drifting layers. A small cabin of weathered timber, roof slanted under the weight of ice, windows frosted white. Not abandoned by time, but untouched recently. Salvation, or at least shelter. Jack forced his legs through the drifts, Rex bounding ahead, barking once, a sharp sound swallowed by the wind. Jack grabbed the door handle, expecting it to be frozen shut, but the door opened with surprising ease, almost as if someone had come through not long ago. Inside was darkness, still, silent, cold, but not deadly cold. The storm's roar dulled behind the wooden walls. He shut the door, and the difference felt like stepping into another world. No heater, no electricity, but there was a stone fireplace, and beside it, a neatly stacked pile of split firewood. Not accidental, prepared. Jack moved deeper, scanning like a marine clearing a room. A small table held metal canisters, a water jug, and several sealed bags of dried food, jerky, lentils, oats. Enough to live, not enough to relax. On the center of the table lay a folded piece of paper, held in place by a smooth river stone. The handwriting was steady, not rushed, not panicked. "If you are reading this, you must be in trouble. Use what you need. Stay alive. That is all that matters. I hope you make it." No name, no signature, no explanation, just help, offered without credit. Jack stared at the note longer than necessary. Something in it hit him harder than the cold ever could. In the Marines, help always came with a name, a rank, a chain of command, a debt to repay. This was different. Survival from a stranger. Kindness without identity. He folded the note, slid it into his pocket like something sacred. He got to work. He stripped off his wet gloves, fumbled stiff fingers around the firewood, stacked logs, tore open the emergency starter kit beside the hearth. Sparks caught on the kindling. Fire grew, heat spread. Rex curled beside it immediately, exhausted. Jack ran a hand over the dog's back, feeling the trembling muscles slowly relaxing. "Good boy. You saved us." As the warmth thawed his thoughts, Jack finally let himself sit, back against the wooden wall, breathing deeply. The storm howled outside, but could no longer reach them. For the first time in days, death was not close enough to taste. They were alive, because someone they would never meet had chosen to save them. Morning came slowly in the cabin. The storm outside now reduced to scattered flurries drifting past the frost-rimmed window. The fire had burned low, leaving only soft orange embers that pulsed like a heartbeat in the half-light. Jack Miller opened his eyes to the unfamiliar stillness, the first moment in days where survival did not demand immediate movement. His body ached from the cold and from the lingering exhaustion of pushing through the blizzard, but his breathing was steady. Rex lay beside the fireplace, curled tightly, fur warmed and dry, eyes half open in a lazy, satisfied calm that came only after knowing death had been close, but not close enough. Jack stood, joints stiff, back cracking from sleeping against the wooden wall. The cabin revealed more than he noticed last night. Tools neatly hung on the wall, a small metal basin in the corner, and a hand-built table made from cedar planks. Whoever had built this place wasn't just surviving. They had prepared it, as if it mattered that someone someday would need it. He walked to the window and pushed aside the thin fabric curtain. The forest outside had changed shape now that the wind was gone. Snow deep but unbroken, the trees bowed under weight, the world silent except for the distant groan of shifting ice. It wasn't safe to leave yet, not with the threat of another storm building low in the sky. But it would be soon. Jack wasn't the kind of man who took charity without earning it back. Even in the Marines, where saving each other's lives was routine, he had never liked the idea of being the one carried. A man without purpose rots, his old sergeant once told him, and Jack had never shaken that truth. He decided he wouldn't walk away from this cabin as just a beneficiary. He would leave it better than he found it. He moved through the supply shelf again, taking note of gaps. Only half a jug of water remained, less than a week's ration of food. Enough for them because someone else had planned ahead. But what about the next person? What if it wasn't a soldier with training, but a teenager, a lost hunter, a family with a child? The thought settled something in him, not guilt, but a duty. He opened the door briefly, testing the air. The cold hit him instantly, sharp and metallic in his lungs, but the sky had opened just enough to see distant mountains. Travel could wait. Repair came first. He found a rusted axe near the woodpile outside, dug from beneath a crust of ice, and began splitting logs, each strike echoing in the frozen clearing. His breath fogged in the air, sweat cooling too fast against his skin. But the rhythm steadied him, grounding him in purpose. Rex lounged nearby, watching with the quiet alertness of a soldier off duty, tail thumping against the floorboard every now and then, as if approving the work. Later, Jack climbed onto the roof with a hammer he found under the sink, securing loose shingles, patching gaps where snowmelt could seep in. His hands froze through his gloves, but he kept going until the boards held firm. After that, he replaced the broken hinge on the back door with one from his pack, a spare he never thought he'd need. He stacked the chopped wood inside, lined neatly for the next occupant. Not comfort, preparation. By evening, the cabin felt different, not just warmer, but cared for. He sat at the table again, staring at the note that had saved his life, the handwriting calm and confident, almost gentle. If you are reading this, you must be in trouble. Use what you need. Stay alive. There were no instructions to repay, no name to honor, no identity to thank. That kind of giving was rare. So rare it felt like a responsibility. Jack took a scrap of paper from his pack, not new but clean, and a pen that had survived 5 years of field duty. He thought for a moment before writing, "I was saved here. I have repaired what I could and left food and water for the next person. I hope you make it too. Whatever you take, leave something behind." He did not sign it. A signature would turn the act into ownership, and that was not the point. The point was continuation. From his backpack, he placed 2 unopened military-grade protein packs, a sealed water pouch, and a steel fire starter beside the note. Not donations, investments in another life. Rex watched from the floor, ears tilted, understanding in the way dogs did, not with language, but with presence. Jack scratched the fur behind his ears, the way he did during missions overseas when Rex had spotted danger before any human eyes could. "You and me, buddy," Jack murmured. "Someone helped us. Now we help the next one." The wind outside began to pick up again. Not yet a storm, but a warning. They would leave in the morning, before the next wave of snow. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, Jack felt something he hadn't felt since the Corps. A sense of belonging, not to a place, but to a chain of unseen hands helping each other across time. He stoked the fire, sat down beside Rex, and closed his eyes. Just for a moment. The cabin creaked, but did not break. The night was cold, but they were warm. Survival was no longer borrowed. It was shared. The winter had not yet loosened its grip on the northern mountains when the next traveler appeared, though the worst of the storms had passed. The forest had settled into a quieter cold, still harsh, still unforgiving, but no longer roaring with the same lethal force that had nearly buried Jack and Rex weeks earlier. Snow lay thick along the slopes, untouched except for the faint trace of deer tracks and the deep, staggered prints of someone who was clearly not an animal. Her name was Sarah Brooks, 29 years old, a biology graduate student from Seattle who had come to Montana to photograph migratory elk herds for a research project tied to her university. She was tall, around 5'9", with a lean build shaped from years of backpacking rather than gym work. Her reddish-brown hair, now tangled and frozen in thin strands against her cheeks, usually fell in neat waves to her shoulders. Today, it looked like it had lived through a week of wind and bad decisions. Her skin was pale, freckles dusted across her nose and cheekbones, but now flushed red from the cold. She had intelligent eyes, green, sharp, observant, but at the moment they held exhaustion, fear, and stubborn refusal to collapse. She had been hiking with a group before the weather shifted, but a wrong turn and delayed radio check-in left her separated, with only a half-charged phone, a thin emergency blanket, and the desperate hope that she was not walking deeper into the wilderness. She had not eaten in almost 20 hours, and dizziness crept into her steps. Every breath came out in a ragged plume. Her gloves were soaked, her boots cracking at the seams. She knew enough survival theory to understand the danger. Hypothermia kills slowly, and then all at once. Her vision blurred again when she saw the shape through the trees. Not quite a house, not a ranger station, but something built. Something impossible to mistake for nature. She forced her legs forward, stumbling rather than walking, grabbing at tree trunks to keep her balance until she reached the small wooden cabin. The door gave when she leaned into it. She fell through the entrance, dropping her backpack to the floor with a dull thud. Stillness, safety, warmth, faint but real. The interior was exactly as Jack had left it. The wood stacked neatly, the repaired roof holding strong, the tools organized, the supplies arranged in careful rows. A small fire remained in the hearth, now only glowing coals, but enough to feel like the world had not abandoned her. It wasn't the heat that made her cry. It was the handwriting on the note resting on the table. I was saved here. I have repaired what I could and left food and water for the next person. I hope you make it too. Whatever you take, leave something behind. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, not from cold, but from emotion. Weeks of exhaustion, fear, near collapse, all wrapped into a sudden realization that someone she would never meet had thought of her before she existed in this place. She noticed the older, faded note beneath it, the original message written in a different hand, and the meaning settled in. This was not a temporary shelter. It was a chain of survival. Sarah moved slowly through the space, taking inventory not with the greed of someone scavenging to survive, but the quiet reverence of someone aware they had stepped into a story already in progress. She drank water sparingly, ate just enough to regain clarity, then sat beside the fire and held her hands near the heat. She waited an hour before her strength returned enough to move without shaking. Once her mind cleared, she studied the supplies and thought about what she could contribute. She didn't have food to spare, but she did have a compact first aid kit designed for field research. Bandages, antiseptic, burn cream, antibiotics, gloves, and a roll of gauze. She placed it neatly on the shelf where the water was stored. Then she added her portable butane heating torch, the kind used to sterilize instruments outdoors, but also powerful enough to start a fire in wet conditions. Small items, maybe, but they could save a life as surely as firewood or rations. She took a piece of paper from her journal, tore out a clean page, and wrote, "I don't know who you are, but you saved me. I was lost and out of food. I'm leaving a medical kit and a heat torch in return. I hope this place keeps helping people long after us." Like Jack, she did not sign her full name, only initials, SB. Before leaving, she swept the floor, refolded the spare blanket, and added dry branches to the woodpile. It wasn't just shelter anymore. It felt like a responsibility she had inherited. When she stepped outside, the sky was brighter, clouds thinning, the path ahead clearer than the one behind. She looked back once, then whispered, "Thank you," though no one was there to hear it. The cabin remained behind her, unchanged but no longer the same. It had saved a second life, and now it was waiting for the next. Spring in the Montana highlands did not arrive with flowers or warmth the way it did elsewhere. It arrived quietly, in small changes. Snow melting from the lowest branches first, the river cracking open in thin seams of running water, the wind losing its sharpest edge. Jack Miller and Rex walked the trail they once fought to survive, this time not as lost travelers, but as returning witnesses. Jack's beard had grown longer, his hair a little grayer, but his stride was steady. Rex was still strong, still alert, now 5.5 years old, his coat thicker and darker after a full season of recovery. They had not planned to return, but Jack had felt a pull stronger than logic. He needed to see the cabin again, not because he owed it anything, but because something inside him needed proof that the kindness he left behind had not died with the winter. When the cabin finally came into view, Jack stopped, not because it was abandoned or damaged, but because it was different. Little details, but unmistakable ones. A new strip of cloth nailed over a crack in the window frame, a thicker stack of chopped firewood, fresh footprints from different shoes now half melted into mud. Someone had been here. Not just one person, more than one. Inside, the change felt even clearer. The shelves were no longer sparse but full, an odd mix of survival items, mismatched but carefully arranged. A wool blanket folded tightly near the door, a sealed tin of painkillers, a hunting knife in a leather sheath, a roll of duct tape, a jar of instant coffee. Someone had left a small camping lantern with a fresh battery taped to it, labeled with a note. "Use it if the fire goes out." Jack wasn't a man who smiled easily, but the corner of his mouth lifted, just slightly. Rex walked ahead, nose twitching, tail raised. Not cautious, but curious. The dog sniffed the air and then the table where something new sat at the center. A small notebook, leather-bound, no bigger than a hand. A pencil lay beside it. Jack picked it up and flipped to the first page. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Not the first owner of the cabin. Not Jack. Not Sarah. This was someone else. February 12th, I fell through the ice on the lake. My leg is injured, and I thought I was done. I found this cabin because I saw smoke from the chimney. Whoever left water and food here saved my life. I'm leaving antibiotics and a new axe head. I don't know your name, but thank you. The next entry was dated 3 weeks later. Different handwriting. Rounder letters, careful, maybe someone younger. March 3rd. I came here after my truck broke down on the trail road. Slept here 2 nights until the tow reached me, leaving a blanket and a spare lighter. Pay it forward, right? Jack turned another page. More entries. Some long, some only a few words. Over time, the tone changed, from fear and desperation to gratitude and reverence. This wasn't just a cabin anymore. It was a record of strangers, saving strangers. Jack set the notebook down slowly. His hands were still rough, but they trembled just slightly, not from cold, but from the weight of what he was holding. He looked around again, seeing not objects, but people, not faces, but choices. Every item in the room represented a moment when someone who didn't have much still chose to give something. He took a slow breath and spoke aloud, though no human was there to hear him. This is bigger than me, Rex. The dog sat beside him, head tilted, as if listening. Jack had spent years believing the world only noticed loss, not generosity. But here, in a silent wooden cabin in the middle of nowhere, proof of the opposite was stacked on every shelf. People were still good, even when no one was watching. He unpacked his own contribution: a small metal multi-tool, a sealed can of protein powder, and a new water filter straw. Then, instead of leaving a note like before, he opened the notebook and added his entry. April 21st. Came back to see the place that saved my life. It's still helping people. I'm grateful to be one part of this. If you're reading this, you're not alone. Leave what you can. Take only what you must. He signed with no name, just initials. J.M. Rex rested his head against Jack's hand. Outside, the wind passed through the trees softly, no longer a threat, just a reminder of how fragile and strong survival could be. The cabin was no longer a shelter built by one person. It had become a legacy built by many. And it wasn't finished yet. Months had passed, and the world outside the Montana wilderness had shifted into summer. Green grass covering what was once snow, birds nesting in the branches that had bent beneath frost, and sunlight stretching long across the valley. But deep in the forest, the small cabin remained untouched by time in its own quiet way, still standing, still waiting. Jack Miller and Rex returned once more, not as survivors, not as caretakers, but simply as witnesses to something larger than themselves. Jack was leaner now, stronger than he had been during the winter months, the kind of strength that comes not from training, but from steady work and quiet purpose. His beard was thicker, streaked more distinctly with gray, his face more lined, not from age alone, but from a life lived in reflection rather than chaos. Rex walked beside him, tail steady, a little slower than before, but just as loyal. His black and tan coat still thick, though touched by the first strands of silver fur. The dog was aging, not in weakness, but in wisdom. Every movement deliberate rather than impulsive. As they approached the cabin, Jack noticed it immediately. The door had been repaired again, this time with a newer hinge and a fresh coat of sealant. Someone else had come. Someone else had cared. There was a small wind chime hanging near the doorway, made of old shell casings tied with fishing line, clinking softly in the breeze, a sound too gentle for the battlefield, but perfect for the woods. A child might have made it, or someone with time and the desire to leave something behind that wasn't just practical, but meaningful. Inside, the shelves were fuller than ever. A sealed tin of baby formula, a pair of wool socks, child-sized, a small hand-carved wooden wolf, its edges rough but shaped with intention. Jack felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, but the deep press of empathy for stories he did not know. He walked to the notebook on the table. The leather cover was worn now, softened from use, thick as if swollen with memory. He opened it gently. The pages had multiplied, some in pen, some in pencil, some clearly written by hurried or shaking hands. Then he reached the newest entry. The handwriting was steady but slightly uneven, as if written by someone unused to writing while tired or emotional. June 2nd. We were hiking with our 6-year-old son when the storm hit unexpectedly. We lost the trail, and our boy was showing signs of hypothermia. We thought we were going to lose him. This cabin saved us. The food, the blankets, the firewood, someone we will never meet, kept our family alive. We are leaving a solar lantern. It charges in the sun and gives light through the night. May it guide someone else just the way this place guided us. There was no full name, no request for thanks. Just 3 initials beneath the message, LR, MR, and JR, the last one written in a smaller, childlike scrawl. Jack rested his hand on the page and closed the notebook with care. He didn't write anything. He didn't need to. The chain was already alive, stronger now than when he had first added his words. The cabin no longer needed reminders to continue. Human kindness had become instinctive within this place. Rex nudged Jack's hand, and he smiled softly, scratching behind the dog's ear. "Looks like we're not the story anymore, buddy," he murmured. "Just the beginning." The firewood was already stocked. The roof was solid. The shelves were orderly. Jack didn't feel compelled to fix or add anything, not because he didn't care, but because others already had. The cycle no longer depended on him. That was the proof that mattered. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking back at the cabin the way a soldier looks back at a battlefield, not with trauma, but with reverence. Then he turned away, Rex falling into step beside him. No one watched them leave. No one knew they had come back. And that was exactly the point. The cabin remained behind them, quiet, unmarked, and full of unnamed generosity, ready for the next lost traveler, ready to save a life without ever asking for gratitude or recognition. In the forest, some legacies were carved in wood. Others were carved in silence. Sometimes, the greatest miracles are not loud, dramatic, or announced from the sky. They happen quietly, in the way a stranger leaves a blanket for someone they will never meet, in the way a cabin in the middle of a frozen forest becomes a lifeline for a family, in the way kindness keeps moving from one set of hands to the next, without ever asking for credit. Maybe that is how God works in this world, not always through thunder, but through people, through simple acts of love that travel farther than we ever imagine, through the quiet good we choose to do when no one is watching. And maybe the world is not waiting for a miracle. Maybe the miracle is already here. Every time we choose kindness instead of silence, every time we help without expecting anything in return, every time we become the answer to someone else's prayer. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Carry it forward. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a kind comment below to inspire others. And if you believe in the power of unseen goodness, make sure to subscribe so these stories of faith, love, and second chances can keep reaching more people. May God bless you, your home, and every quiet act of kindness you give to the world. Amen.